Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the channel. Wow, what's a race? Yeah, what's a race? That's all I can say. British Grand Prix. Been over a couple of hours now. Had time to absorb. I actually went out for dinner after the race, which is why I was streaming this particular stream a little bit later than perhaps I would have otherwise done. But what's a race? It was well worth the wait. Delayed by almost an hour. So for those who haven't watched the race, I recommend watching highlights, and the highlights clip will be quite long, I suspect, because it was action packed. So obviously, just a reminder, just a quick recap and refresh. Carlos Sainz having started on pole position, Max Verstappen second, and Leclerc in third, Perez in fourth, and Hamilton in fifth. And the start of the Grand Prix what led to a couple of separate big instances, one involving the Alfa Romeo driver of Joe Gwen. I can't even pronounce his name. And also Alex Albon, who was shunted by Sebastian Vettel. Went on to get points, by the way. We'll come to that shortly. But it was a crazy start to the race, which led to an immediate red flag. The red flag then stopped the race for nearly an hour. So it was an hour delayed for the start of the race. And then when they resumed the race, at the time of the red flag, Verstappen was leading the race. Actually, both Ferraris had really poor starts. Hamilton got into third, followed by what was then Sainz, followed by Verstappen. However, after the red flag, the restart was given. Restart under normal restarting conditions, so from a standing start, and they reverted the grid back to the original starting grid, and a lot of confusion as to why, because obviously at the time of the red flag being called, Verstappen was leading, Sainz was second, and Hamilton was third, and now they were going to revert back to the start. So there was confusions about that, but. And just so to sort of clear this up, I guess, in that respect, the reason why they'd done that was because they hadn't all the car at the time of the red flag, not all cars had passed the second safety car line. That is why they reverted back to the original starting lineup for the restart, because every car had to have passed the second safety line, and they hadn't. So that is why the grid reverted back. And then, just again to recap, from that point on, Sainz had a better start, not a great start, but a better start. And Verstappen wasn't able to get past this time on off the start, and off they went. Hamilton had a really slow start as well. Actually, dropped down to fifth, I think, behind Lando Norris, but before eventually getting back in front of him. So a bit of two different starts really there. So two starts from the same order, resulting in completely different results. So you had a first restart, or the first start, with Verstappen taking lead from Sainz and Hamilton getting up to third, to the second restart, Sainz being able to hold on to the lead and Hamilton dropping down to fifth. So couldn't have had two more contradicting starts really. But then as the race went on, Verstappen did eventually get past Sainz and was looking comfortable. And it got to a point where Leclerc looked like he may have to get past Sainz. And I think Ferrari were debating. They were taking a bit of time. And I'll be interested to see if Verstappen didn't have his reliability issues, which we'll come on to in a minute, would Ferrari have eventually given the orders for Leclerc to pass? Because I feel that they took a while before deciding, and if Verstappen didn't have the technical issues that he had, he could have gained further into the lead before Ferrari would have decided to swap. And I feel Ferrari need to start being decisive in their decision making. They really need to start being decisive, because they're going to cost themselves titles because they are too slow to make decisions. Ferrari, they need to be quick. The minute Leclerc was held up by Sainz in that first stint before Verstappen had his technical issues, they should have. They waited and they waited. It's only by luck, really, that Verstappen's car gave up the ghost, really, or lost a lot of performance. because they made such a long time, they need to be quicker at making decisions. You've got to be a lot more, okay, right, look, we'll swap it round later if we have to, or swap it back later if we get the opportunity. But if you take split decisions like that, but if Verstappen didn't have the problem, Verstappen could have been 2.5, 3 seconds further down the road than what he was when Leclerc was behind or got stuck behind Sainz. And then it's game over. Then you're even out of the pit stop range. So they do need to be more quick. They did make I don't know, could you call it an error of judgment? What did Ferrari do the right thing by pitting Sainz and leaving Leclerc out with the safety car? When the safety car was there, they had about 6 seconds to react to before Leclerc went past the pit straight, the pit line, in order to enter the pit stop or the pit lane. And they decided to pit Sainz, but Sainz was a few seconds down the road from Leclerc, so they had a slightly bit longer to make a decision on that. That obviously pitting one or the other was obviously going to be key, but which one? And I would be, if I was Leclerc, I would be disappointed with Ferrari. You're leading the race, you're their best hope. In all fairness, with without dissing Sainz, so to speak. I feel Leclerc's their best bet at a world championship. He was leading the race. The only reason I can think that they decided to pit Sainz first would be because of the fact that they had asked Sainz to move out the way to allow Leclerc through. So they were leveling it up. That's the only thing I can think of why they would do it in that order. And actually, as it happens, had Leclerc not pushed for the team orders, then it would have been him that pitted instead of Sainz under the safety car. So very, I don't know, very unfortunate, I guess. I think that's the only thing you can say about Leclerc. Unfortunately, I don't think Ferrari they could have done more. They were too close to double stack. If they double stacked, they would have lost place to Lewis, without a doubt. So double stacking was not an option. So I don't know. I think in the end, probably the right call. Although I do feel that Leclerc was the quicker driver today. What we did see, though, absolutely no doubt about this, that Mercedes have made improvement on their car. Whatever upgrades they've done, and they did bring some big aero upgrades this weekend, it has worked. They're not quite race-winning cars yet, but they aren't far off. They're now within the mix. They're now a headache for the likes of Red Bull and Ferrari. They're a headache in that that they're going to get in the way. I don't think Mercedes realistically are fighting for a championship this year. Even if they continue to improve their car, I think they're too far behind. I don't think they're going to win they're in the hunt for a championship this year, but they're going to have a big part to play in who wins it. And they are going to be a headache. They are going to be in the way, so to speak. So, but the other thing that has become pretty obvious, I think, a big giveaway for Red Bull, is the way in which that car is so reliant on its aeros, because Perez and Leclerc had virtually an identical issue with the front wings. Perez, with the same issue, fell back down the grid quite quickly, had to pit, couldn't race with that. He couldn't race with that with that front wing. Leclerc had exactly the same incident, didn't need to change front nose. That shows that the Red Bull car, the setup of the car, they're quite reliant on the aeros from that front end, from that front wing. That front end plate going missing on Leclerc's car, whilst it would have gave it some performance drop, it gave them nowhere near the performance drop that Red Bull got. So that's a bit of a giveaway to the teams. The other teams will be looking at it and saying they are heavily reliant on their aero package. If that front wing, one little bit of the front wing went off, and the performance of that Red Bull car dropped drastically. But although we're not entirely sure of what the problem was for Verstappen's car yet. We'll have to wait for the post-mortem, if you like, on that. What it suspected that was the issue was the flooring, and it was to the extent where Verstappen had basically lost all rear end grip. What some of the experts on the telly, on Sky, for example, were saying that if other cars lost that same level of downforce, they wouldn't have, and it happens all the time. Apparently, it's quite a common bit of downforce to lose. That had that happened to other cars, they wouldn't have lost the level of grip that Max Verstappen had lost, which again tells us they are very heavily reliant on certain aspects of that car. That Leclerc loses a front end plate. Okay, a bit of a performance drop, but you know what? He was on his way to winning the race if it weren't for the safety car. Perez, that put him in. That put him in with a couple of laps because he was losing performance very quickly. The same piece. That tells us that for Red Bull have got they've got such a finely tuned aero package that one little piece of the front wing goes off and the whole car stops working to its to an effect that would give them a race-winning car. That's a big giveaway that was. So that'll be interesting to see how that pans out in the next race. Now let's bring up let's actually bring up the final standings, and I believe I say subject to change. I believe there's a possibility of Perez getting a 5-second time penalty, but that will depend. And let's just bring out the screen a little bit more. Bear with me. There we go. See if that can make it a little bit bigger. There is a chance, albeit small, but there's a chance that Perez could be slapped with a 5-second penalty for gaining an advantage when leaving the track. However, I believe he finished more than 6 seconds in front of Hamilton. So if they did slap on that 5-second penalty, it won't make any difference to the standings. Perez was far enough that even if you gave him a 5-second penalty, he still finishes second. So that's. Well, keep an eye on whether they do punish him for that. They could well do, but I don't think it's going to make any difference to the standings. Now, as we know, Carlos Sainz, first race win. Mixed feelings. I'm pleased for the guy. I think he needed this win. I really think out of the top drivers, I would say Carlos Sainz was really the most in need of a win. He needed something just to give a push. And after going so close against Max Verstappen last time out in Canada as well. But I don't think he was the fastest today. And actually, Charles Leclerc, despite having a front end plate missing on his front wing, was the faster driver. It's only down to that pit stop. If Carlos Sainz, or if Leclerc had a pit stop instead of instead of Carlos Sainz, I think Leclerc wins that race. It's that simple. So Sergio Perez, what a great drive after a start where he was down in the back of the grid, having had to change his front wing. I think Red Bull will find some comfort in that, although it does mean that again he closes the gap on teammates Max Verstappen in terms of the title, championship, and of course the next race as well, big one for Red Bull, is the Austrian Grand Prix next week. And the reason why that is going to be big is their home race. Don't forget, it's Red Bull. The owner is Austrian. Red Bull, the brand, is an Austrian brand. So, home Grand Prix essentially for them next week. And it'll be interesting to see. They'll want to, mark my words, Christian Horner will want a response to what happened today. But again, reliability issues are a problem. And obviously, clear exposure, by the way, to downforce. If you lose a bit of downforce, that car really drops off performance much quicker than other cars with the same loss of downforce. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on, see what other cars or what other teams think of that. And Red Bull will no doubt be a little bit anxious at the fact that they've got a little bit exposed today in that respect. Third place for Hamilton, Mercedes. What a drive from Hamilton. What a drive. Unlucky, really, to only get third. Leclerc fourth again. He was arguably one of the quickest drivers today, and it was only down to the fact that an unkind pit stop or an unkind safety car for Charles Leclerc. Again, the question really, I guess, is were Ferrari right to pit Sainz and leave Leclerc out. I think they were too close to double stack. If they double stacked them, one of them would have almost certain, well, not almost certainly, they would have absolutely lost a place to Hamilton if they double stacked them. So they only had time to get one of the cars in. They started to bring in Sainz instead of Leclerc. Now, there's two possible reasons why that may be. Reason number one, timing. I believe there was only about 6 seconds or so between the safety car being deployed and Leclerc passing the pit straight or the pit entrance. So it could have been that they just simply didn't have enough time to react. The other reason, or the other possible reason why they decided to pit Sainz, may have also been to the fact that they were making up for the fact that they asked Carlos Sainz to move out of the way for Leclerc. So was this getting an even look? We've allowed you through Leclerc, so Carlos Sainz is going to get the choice of a pit, and he's decided to pit. That's a possibility as well. I don't know if we'll ever know. I don't know if Ferrari will ever publicly tell us realistically if that's a realistic reason or not. I don't know, but it's worth noting. But yeah, Leclerc, what could have been a very good race turned out to be not a good race. Okay, he's gained some points on Verstappen, but he hasn't gained many points. He's only gained 4 points on Verstappen at a time when he could have got 21 points on Verstappen, and that's a big difference, but a big drop. So we'll have to see how that one plays out in that respect. Fernando Alonso still doing a stellar job, isn't he? You can see why, by the way, Alpine brought him in, because he's pretty consistently there this season with that car. Brilliant drive again, top 5. Couldn't have done any more. Alonso couldn't have done any more in that car. Lando Norris, 6th place. I felt a bit sorry for Lando in the end, but that McLaren, he gets the most out of that McLaren, but the McLaren just isn't. You know what? I had high hopes for the McLaren at the start of the season, but it's not. I almost think they're best off writing the season off and really starting to progress a bit early onto next season. I know that they're not really in a race for top 3, are they, in terms of constructors? I think realistically, if they could get 4th, that'd be very good. My gut feeling is they'll probably get 5th. So I think it wouldn't be a bad idea for them to start thinking about next season's car, McLaren, and using next season as an opportunity to try and push themselves forward back into a fighting for 3rd place. With that being said, the one thing that's really hindering them this season, and we know we've been there before, and that's Danny Ricciardo. Danny Ricciardo down in 13th. So McLaren will want to be trying to push for best of the rest and get that 4th spot, but they need 2 drivers there that are going to do it. And at this moment in time, Danny Ricciardo yet again is not there. He's not doing the job. Lando Norris is batting out for 5th and 6th, and Ricciardo's not getting into the points. So that's literally the difference as to why they are. I think they're 5th. We'll have a look at the standings in a minute, but I'm pretty sure they're 5th. It's very tight, that midfield bunch as well. So, and of course, let's not forget Max Verstappen, 7th place. As silly as this sounds, 7th place isn't actually that bad, given the circumstances, given the situation, given the events of today. 7th place for Max Verstappen isn't that bad. And actually, I mean, so damaged was his car that Mick Schumacher was all over his gearbox. He done well, actually, to keep that car in front of him. And yeah, it's perhaps a more experienced driver probably gets past Verstappen there as well in those last few laps. So fair play to Max Verstappen. He stayed out there. And by the way, a lot of drivers in Max Verstappen's would have said, well, my car's damaged, blah, blah, blah. You know, I should just come in. Let's just retire the car. And it goes back to a couple of weeks ago, actually. A few weeks ago, and Hamilton said, well, why don't we just retire the car and so on? And they said, well, no, we still think we could get some points out of this. And that's why, and Red Bull showed today, you know, that's why, you know, despite Verstappen's car being in the condition it was in, and it was in a bad way, we could see it was in a bad way, he's managed to get points. But those 6 points that he got today, those 6 points could be vital come the end of the season, could be vital. So we'll have to wait and see how that one pans out as well. But like I said, it was a good, solid race from Verstappen, given the circumstances, to get the points. And guys, I think 6 points, given the situation, was the maximum he could get. He was never going to finish higher than seventh, in my opinion. So that is the top set of drivers. A quick note as well, by the way, Latifi, who started in the points and ended up down in 12th. A little bit unfortunate for him, because I thought there would be an opportunity for him to get points. Well, let's have a look at the standings and the driver standings, and it's all about Verstappen at the moment, 181 to 147. Sergio Perez, so both the Red Bulls still leading the way. I just wonder whether today might show, because Ferrari were quicker today than they have been, and I thought Ferrari showed today that perhaps it's not quite over just yet. And Red Bull do have reliability issues, and actually there are going to be times later in the year where Red Bull have to use that extra engine. Ferrari have already made that call. Ferrari have already used that extra power unit and taken the inevitable penalties that come with it. Mark my words, Red Bull are going to be doing the same. The question is when are they going to do it? So there are going to be opportunities there later on as well. But Ferrari do need to finish races. They do need to be reliable. They need to start being more decisive. They're far too undecisive in terms of their strategy calls. They're too slow. Like I said, you go back to the first few laps when Verstappen was in the lead, and Leclerc was all over Sainz's gearbox, and Ferrari were debating about whether or not to allow Leclerc to go past. It was only by the fact that Verstappen got some damage to his floor. If Verstappen didn't get any damage to his floor, he would have just continued building the lead while Sainz was holding up Leclerc, and Ferrari sat around going, "Oh, do we? Don't we? Or I don't know. Or Vamos, or And it's already cost them a lot of points this season. It could have cost them more today. Arguably, it probably did cost them more today. So they have to start, Ferrari. They've got to start being quicker and decisive in these calls. They are too slow to react, Ferrari. Too slow to react. They need. You know what? I've said this on the channel before, and I've said it several times this season. I've said it. Ferrari won't win a championship whilst they are making the strategic calls they are making. They can't win a championship while they're making the strategic calls they're making. Their car's not quick enough. Their car's quick enough to win races. Their car's quick enough to win championships. If they stop making bad decisions and making wrong strategic calls. Today, when they did allow Leclerc to go past, that it was the right thing to do. He was the quickest car. They've got to think about the race win. He was the quickest car. But they could have, if Verstappen didn't have the damage he had, when Leclerc was behind Sainz the first time round, and they decided not to give the team orders, had Verstappen not have had the damage to the car, he would have just gone straight off into the distance. Right, I'm just going to quickly grab a drink, and then we'll quickly look at the Constructors' Championship. I'll be right back. Apologies for that. I desperately needed a drink there. So apologies for that. To go and top up my old Pepsi. No, I think it's Coke Zero I've got. I don't know, whatever the wife's bought. Sorry about that. So as I was saying, let's go back to the standings, and let's look at the constructors' standings. Now, Red Bull lead the way. I do not see that changing. I know today was a much better day for Ferrari, but in the grand scheme of things, if I'm being honest, it's hard to see past Red Bull. The next race is the home race, the Austrian Grand Prix. The only thing that may still happen is, and this is where we do get swings. If you remember, the Red Bull had the first couple of races, they had some major reliability issues. And then after that, the Red Bull reliability has been a lot better. And then Ferrari reliability has crumbled. That could swing back the other way. We do know. And it's not, this is a fact. You've heard it here right now. I can tell you right now. Red Bull will be taking penalties later in the season for power units. No doubt about it. Absolutely no doubt about it. The question is, when do they take those? Now, Ferrari have, with Leclerc, have already taken a engine penalty. They've already gone above the allocated power units. They may need to take more as well. And in fact, this title could literally come down to who accumulates the less penalties. And I know that sounds stupid, but it really could. That's where we're at. Who is going to generate the fewest amount of penalties? Because obviously, with the engine, the power unit, if you use more than 3, you take penalties. But you don't take one penalty and use as many as you want. You get a penalty for every power unit you use. Ferrari have already taken a penalty with Charles Leclerc. Now, that doesn't mean that they're an engine ahead, so to speak, of Red Bull. It just means that they've decided to use one of the ones they've got. They could actually still repair one of the older power units and so on. And it might be that actually they decided they wanted for that race because it was Canada, because it's a high acceleration circuit. It's a high power driven circuit that actually it would make sense to put a new engine in there and give Leclerc the best opportunity of getting maximum amount of points rather than a reconditioned older one. So there are strategic thinking to this. Red Bull will take penalties. The question is when do they use them? When will they make these decisions? We know this because they've already had engine failures and power unit failures, Red Bull, particularly with Sergio Perez. So we know that, yes, they can fix those engines and reuse them, but they are not going to be the same as a brand new one. So sometimes it's worth taking one race a penalty, knowing that you've then got a decent power unit for the next 3 or 4 races after that. And what a race, says Martin. Martin, it was a belt of a race. I'm gonna be a little bit biased because I am, being a Brit, it is my home Grand Prix. But I would argue that was probably the best race we've had this season, in terms of outright. We didn't need rain, did we? It didn't rain today, and it's surprised because there were forecasts for showers, and there was rain in other local areas around Silverstone, but none in Silverstone. But for a fully dry race, that is without doubt, in my opinion, the best Grand Prix we've had yet this season. Towards after the safety car, what was going on with? You had Hamilton, you had Alonso, you had Leclerc, and you had Perez. You had 4 cars side by side at one point. I mean, when Sainz was when Leclerc was defending of Perez and Hamilton cut up both of them and up the inside, and then and then it was switched back the other way. I mean, what racing, by the way! What absolute racing! It was a joy to watch. A joy to watch. Loved it, absolutely loved it, and it was exciting. And this is what racing should be like. We've got too much of this DRS train that we end up getting. And I'd done a stream a couple of hours before the race day, and I said, you won't get a DRS train in Silverstone. It won't happen. And the reason why is because it's not a circuit designed for it, because you can, with the fast turns and the way these cars have been designed for this year, it was always going to be a lot easier to be close to the car in front. And the straights you have fast corners into the straights. Now, normally speaking, if you go back to last year, it's following a car around a quick corner. That was difficult because of the dirty air coming back off the car in front. you couldn't get that same level grip on a quick corner, on a fast corner. That has changed this year, and it showed today. It really did show. So yes, thank you very much for your comment, Martin. Yes, what a race! What a race indeed! Brilliant race. Now going back to the constructors championships, Red Bull currently lead race. Ferrari, Mercedes. Mercedes. How on earth are they where they are in third place? I have no idea. Baffling, absolutely baffling. And actually, fair play to them because they have had a horrific car for the large parts of the season. Horrific. And not only are they in third place, they're a long way in third place. McLaren in fourth place, as I said, I thought they might just be hanging on to fourth. Unless Danny Ricciardo starts to change. Without Ricciardo, McLaren won't finish fourth. It's that simple. Ricciardo has to start getting to the points, otherwise they can kiss the fourth place goodbye. And actually, it's very tight. If you go 73, then 67, and 51 for the Alfa Romeos, they can easily finish fifth or sixth. Easily finish fifth or sixth. Do I think Mercedes is back? Possibly, Martin. The only reason I say possibly is because after Barcelona, we thought, oh, that was better. They might be back. And after Miami, remember practice in Miami and whatnot, and we thought, oh, look, George Russell, P2. Oh, perhaps they found some, And then qualifying and race was a disaster, an absolute disaster. So, for me to say they're back, I would need to see some consistency. I think Austria, if they are in the mix again in Austria, then you can say they're back. I do think they are in a position now where they can start causing the Ferraris and Red Bulls headaches. I don't think Mercedes are in a position to win the races yet. I do think they're in a position to be in the mix. And by being in the mix and challenging for podiums, it's a headache for Red Bull and Ferrari. It's a headache in terms of strategical thinking, which probably favours Red Bull more than Ferrari because Ferrari strategically are useless. And Red Bull are a lot quicker with their strategic thinking. So in short, just in short answer to your question there, Martin, I think they could be back, but I just need to see another race or two to confirm it, shall we say, to be on the safe side. And like I said, Mercedes, McLaren are just hanging on to fifth. And like I said, Danny Ricciardo, that's a separate topic. You can talk about that separately. But Danny Ricciardo, I think I will be surprised if Ricciardo is at McLaren next year. If I'm being honest, I can't see him being at McLaren next year. And likewise, I thought Sainz was under pressure, by the way. I thought Sainz was under pressure. A couple of weeks ago before Canada, I said if Sainz don't start pushing towards the front of the race or front of the four race wins, Ferrari will be looking at it saying they need two people who can win races. So he needed that today. Sainz, he's another driver I thought could have been at risk. And Latifi this weekend I thought was at risk as well. In fact, he's had so many collisions, Latifi. I'm surprised he was even had a race seat for this weekend, to be honest with you. So, but yeah, Williams down at the bottom with just 3 points. They were better today, though. They were better today. In fact, it's the team that's been the outstanding team for the wrong reasons is the Aston Martin, in my opinion. Down with just 18 points. You know what? They were after Miami. Was it in Miami where there were a lot of complaints about whether or not Aston Martin had copied another team's style? It's not the first time, by the way, they've been accused of that. I think they were in their Force India. They done the same thing, didn't they? With I think it was with Mercedes at the time. That's my view on that. Looking at next week, then the Austrian Grand Prix. Like I said, it is the home Grand Prix for Red Bull. Red Bull are an Austrian company, of course. The owner is Austrian, and I think the circuits might suit the Red Bulls more. I think it's hard to say. So it's quite it'd be an interesting track. It's a lot more narrow track, but I do find Austrian Grand Prix is actually quite good for overtaking as well. Although we'll see how this generates on this new with these new car designs. But I still favour Red Bull for next week. The question, like as Martin rightly asked, the question next week is going to be: can Mercedes continue with that revival? And are they going to be? I don't think they're going to win the race next week. I'll put that to a fairly safe bet. But if they have made genuine improvements, they could be in for the mix. And strategically, that could. I mean, and when I say strategically, this is what I mean by strategically, how they become a headache for Red Bull and Ferrari. For most of the season, it has been Red Bull and Ferrari as 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pretty much, barring the odds, the odds session where you've had a bit of rain or something like that, and it's thrown some results a little bit out of normality. Normally speaking, the 2 Red Bulls and the 2 Ferraris are being the quickest cars. Where Mercedes now coming into it is could cause a headache is all of a sudden, let's say Perez would have been guaranteed top 4. Virtually, wasn't he? Virtually guaranteed top 4. If he had a bad race, if he had a bad qualifying, he would finish 4th comfortably. Now he won't finish 4th. He could finish 6th. And let's say Verstappen is 2nd and Sergio is now 6th because you've got Mercedes in the mix there. Strategically, that leaves Red Bull unable to use Perez to the effect to help Verstappen, i.e., forcing Ferraris into pit stops by playing an undercut and so on and so forth. And it's and how important that is. This is the importance of being able to do that. There's absolutely no doubt that last year, had Bottas had been closer to the front 2, Hamilton and Verstappen, throughout the season, Hamilton wins the title last year. An example, point in case being, if you go back to the final race in Abu Dhabi, where obviously without reliving the entire controversy, when Red Bull were able to make that pit stop to put Verstappen on fresh tyres, they were able to do so because of how far Bottas in the same car as Hamilton was away. That Verstappen, they could pit Verstappen and him still come out in front of Bottas. Had Bottas had been closer, as he should have been, and he should have been because he was in the same car as Hamilton, as he should have been, then Verstappen would have been unable to pit, and then Hamilton probably goes on to win that race. And that is the difference. So having a teammate, your second driver, closer to the front when Red Bull, we all know Red Bull are favouring Max Verstappen. Ferrari can't seem to decide, which is what's going to cost them the title, in my opinion. It's having that second driver to play, to make early pit stops or to make late or to run different strategies to force the other drivers, the other team, into making decisions that they weren't necessarily wanting to make. That is a key thing of Formula One. It's a key reason why Hamilton didn't win a title last year and Verstappen did. Martin, what a masterclass from these drivers. Really amazing. Also, Checo from last to P2 gave goosebumps and flashbacks for Checo in 2020. Yes, it was a very, very good drive, albeit a little bit fortunate with the safety car. Without the safety car, he would have dropped back to, I think, 6th or 7th, although he would have had fresh. So he was on the medium tyres. He'd been on a long stint on those medium tyres. I think it was about 31, 32 laps on those medium tyres. Other teams or other drivers had been pitting for the hard tyre. What I think they had done by leaving him out was a no-brainer. Leaving him out on those mediums was an absolute no-brainer for 2 reasons. One, opportunity of safety car. Safety car comes, there's a safety car window, pretty obvious as to why they would do that. Second reason, and this is an important reason as well, is that if a safety car didn't come, they would have left themselves with enough, with a fewer laps, so that they could have gone on soft tires and a brand new set of soft tires. So it's a win-win. It's like a no-lose for them, for Red Bull in that situation. You leave him out in the mediums. Worst case scenario is you'll have to pit him, put on a nice brand new set of soft tires on a low fuel run, and bang in some quick laps. He probably would have taken any lap, and probably would have taken back a couple of positions and get the fastest lap on the same time. Or, as it happens, safety car comes out, in which case he's able to get a brand new set. So I know everyone else was able to get a set of softs on, but importantly, he didn't have to. He lost, or he didn't lose, and he actually gained a lot of time through the pit stop. So things worked out quite well for Perez in terms of things falling into place, if that makes sense. But you're right. It's nice to see, and I think Perez is one of the nicer guys, by the way, in Formula One, in my opinion. And I think he had been. I know, obviously, he was at McLaren for a couple of years, and it didn't quite work out there. And I think he needed an opportunity. I do think the cars this year are the way in which they are set up and designed. I do think helps Verstappen, as it helps other drivers as well. I do think there's a certain style. I think George Russell, for example, has been far more, and actually you probably find younger drivers are far more adaptable because they haven't driven in the previous generation of car for so many years. So, but yes, I agree, Martin. You're right. It was an excellent race, and Checo getting P2. I believe Checo could get a 5-second time penalty. I'm waiting to see whether that's confirmed or not, but it shouldn't make a difference because he finished more than 5 seconds in front of Hamilton. I think it was about 6.2, 6.3 seconds. So if they do slap a 5-second penalty onto him, it won't change the result. So I think he's guaranteed basically P2 on that basis. I don't think he would get more than 5 seconds standard. So obviously Sergio Perez has to be decided whether or not he gained an advantage when he overtook Leclerc, because he left the track and then rejoined, and whether or not he gains an advantage. They said they'll look at that after the race. Normally speaking, you either give the place back or you risk a 5-second penalty later on, normally speaking. I think in this particular case, because he obviously didn't give the place back, so I think if they deem that he did gain an advantage, they'll just slap a 5-second penalty on. He finished 6.3 seconds, 6.3 seconds ahead of Hamilton. So it shouldn't change the result. So it will be barring something odd, it would be a net P2 for Sergio. And it'd be interesting to see, by the way, next week and this is where it's going to be interesting as well for next week. Red Bull Home Grand Prix, and it's going to be Verstappen versus Perez. And look at the standings. Let's bring the standings back up, and we'll bring it back to the drivers. We'll go to the driver standings. There we go. Look at that. Verstappen followed by Perez, 47, 181 to 147. A race win for Perez again would really. I mean, Verstappen is one DNF, by the way, from really falling back into this. So, and some would argue that perhaps he might be overdue it. The reason I say that is because Perez has been very unlucky. He's had more DNFs this year than Verstappen, particularly with the engine failures. But, and I said it earlier on stream, and I say it again now, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind, none whatsoever, that Red Bull, both Verstappen and Perez, are going to have to take penalties later in the year. They're going to have to take additional power units, and how that will affect them. Obviously, in those sort of situations, you pick the races where, one, you really need a solid engine, and two, where overtaking is easy. If you're going to start back of the grid, you can start at the back. If you start at the back of the grid by choice because you've basically had to upgrade your engine or to change your engine, you do it at a track where you know overtaking is going to be possible. Probably on when you've got a sprint race, I guess. You go back to last year in Brazil with Mercedes, and they gave Hamilton a brand new engine, and they knew it was going to give him penalties. They knew that those penalties were going to come, but it made sense to it then because they were at a track where they were going to get, Brazil's quite a good circuit for taking. It's quite a power hungry circuit as well, so it's an excellent time to have that. So yeah, we'll have to see how that one pans out. But I'm to make no mistake about it, make absolutely no mistake about it, they will definitely be taking engine penalties later this year. And just to reiterate what I said earlier in the stream, for those who have joined since, Red Bull showed us today that they are far, far more reliant on aero than virtually any other car. Perez and Leclerc had identical front wing damage. Identical. Leclerc never changed his front wing. Probably should have won the race if it weren't for some strategic errors by Ferrari. Leclerc probably wins the race. Sergio Perez performance dropped so much that he had to change it and go all the way down to virtually last place. I think he was one from the back, I think, actually, after his first pit stop when he had the nose change. What does that say? That shows us that Red Bull are very reliant on the aeros on that car, and it's one little minor part or minor damage to the front wing really affects the car. What does that tell us? That their aeros are focused from the front. If the air doesn't filter the way in which they want it from the front, it really affects the rest of the car quite a lot, far more than the Ferraris with exactly the same part. Also, pointing cases, the flaw on Verstappen's car. Now, it's reported that it was floor damage. We probably won't ever know exactly what it was because Red Bull are never going to disclose the information. But the saying is, I think it's been widely publicised now that there was floor damage. But a lot of the experts are saying, well, that same floor damage to other cars wouldn't have caused the same level of problems Verstappen had, which again highlights that perhaps they are that their car, the aeros on that car are very finely tuned, and that they are far more susceptible to major down performance for minor incursions upon their car. So it'll be interesting to see how other teams play that. Like I said, you had Perez, you had Leclerc as a good example. Exactly the same front wing damage. One lost the front end plate, the other one lost the front end plate. Leclerc nearly went on to win the race if it weren't for Ferrari basically mucking up the strategy. Perez had to get a new front wing and lost so much time and performance. So, it's probably just worth just mentioning, just keeping an eye out on that. So yeah, like I said, here we go. That is where we are at. Max Verstappen versus Sergio, followed by Sergio Perez. Leclerc a long way back in 138. Today was a big blow to Leclerc because 138 points. He got. Let's have a look at the points that they were given. Results. Leclerc got 12 points. Verstappen got 6. Gain of 6 points today. A gain of 6 points for Leclerc. Had he have taken 25, 6, 19 points difference. 19 points difference. Let's go back to the standings. And those 19 points, 138, put him on to 157. He'll be sat in second place. And really, just one DNF from Verstappen puts him in target. So this is what I mean. This is what I mean about Ferrari. They've got to start strategically. They've got to start strategically thinking about this title. I don't. You know what? One of the things I've said, and I've said it for years. When Red Bull under Sebastian Vettel won 4 titles in a row, there was one particular season where they weren't the quickest, and the McLarens were the quickest with Button and Hamilton. The reason Vettel went on to win that title that year was purely down to the fact that McLaren were unable to back a driver. So they and by not backing a driver, by not giving the team orders and so on, you could cost a driver over the course of a season quite a lot of points. So for me, in my opinion, I think Ferrari have got to start deciding which driver they are going to back. I personally would back Leclerc, and that's nothing against Sainz, but Leclerc, I think, and if anyone wants to challenge me on this, be my guest. I think Leclerc's the quickest driver. I think Leclerc, in a Ferrari car that is reliable, challenges Max Verstappen, in my opinion. And Sainz, whilst he had a good week last week in Canada, but there's no doubt it was quicker. It was only due to the fact that Canada was more difficult to overtake that Sainz didn't win it. So, for me, like I said, personally, I think that Ferrari have to start really thinking about who it is they're going to back, because today was a clear example that if you delay those important decisions, they cost you points. They cost you points. They could have cost Ferrari a lot more points today. They've cost Ferrari points previously as well. So they have to make those decisions. Right then, folks, that is it for tonight's stream. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe. I am going to be doing a couple of videos throughout the week. I want to do one about Perez and about his form, but I also want to do one about Ricardo as well. So but I might do them as live streams. I haven't quite decided yet. It's all about timings and whatnot. Busy week with work and so on and so forth. But what a race today. I hope you all enjoyed watching it. I thought it was a terrific race. Long may that continue. For those who watch on the weekends, I will be back next weekend as well, obviously, with the Austrian Grand Prix. And what a race that could be as well. And the next, let's very, very quickly, actually, just go off topic. Let's very quickly look at the schedule. We got Austria, then we got France, then we got Hungary, and I think that's pretty much it up until the summer break. That is blah blah blah. Where are we? So yeah, Austria, France, Hungary, and then we got a break till to Belgium, to Spa, which is a little bit earlier this year actually. Because normally it's in September. Normally it begins September. Obviously, got Netherlands in September. These next three races here, Austria, France, and Hungary, for me, will determine whether or not Ferrari can win a title. Well, win, whether it be drivers or constructors. I don't think they'll win the constructors, but if they're going to challenge for the drivers, these three races are going to be key for them. If they haven't made ground in these three races, then for me, you're running out of time then, because all of a sudden you're more than halfway through, and Belgium's going to be an interesting, and so on. Netherlands, of course, Verstappen's home race. Expect to see lots of orange there, lots of orange flares and so on. Be a very good actually atmosphere there in Holland, I have to say. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you've all enjoyed watching. There is your analysis, or brief analysis, of the British Grand Prix, my home Grand Prix, the excellent British Grand Prix. But until next time, take care, and I'll see you all again soon.